I'm Jeff Galak, a professor at Carnegie Mellon University's Business School. And today, I'm going to break down the invisible force that controls 70% of the US economy. It's not the Federal Reserve. It's not Congress. It's a feeling. And in January 2026, that feeling just hit a 12-year low. Today, we're deconstructing the science of consumer confidence and why a bad vibe can actually trigger a real recession. At its simplest, consumer confidence is a measure of how optimistic or pessimistic you feel about your financial future. This concept was pioneered in the 1940s by an economist named George Katona. He argued that spending isn't just a math problem based on how much money you have. He actually split the economy into two parts: the ability to buy and the willingness to buy. For ability, you could think of this in terms of things like, do you have a job and do you have savings to spend? But for willingness to buy, you have to think about the economy like a psychologist. Because even if you have the money, you have to ask yourself if you feel safe enough to spend it. If everyone has a lot of savings, in traditional economic terms, we'd say consumers have a low budget constraint, and that the economy is going to be firing on all cylinders due to the high spending that's going to follow. But if you feel like things are going poorly, you're not likely to spend what you have in savings. When you feel good about your job and the future, you buy a new car and a new house. When you're worried, you tighten the belt. And because consumer spending makes up 70% of the US economy, if your willingness to spend drops, the whole engine stalls. So how do we know what consumer confidence even is? Well, before we dig into that, if you find this kind of breakdown useful, please take a second to like this video and hit the subscribe button, as that really helps the channel and lets me keep making videos for you. Now, back to how we measure consumer confidence. In short, two major organizations track this every month using massive surveys. They use a baseline score of 100. Anything above 100 means we're feeling better than average. Anything below means we're getting pessimistic. The first of these two is the Conference Board Index, which you can think of as a worker's view on the economy. This survey is focused on how you feel about your job prospects. It asks about things like, are jobs easy to find right now? Do you think they'll be easy to find in 6 months? Or is your paycheck going up? Well, in January 2026, the Conference Board Expectations Index fell to 65.1. To put that into context, historically, whenever the number gets below 80, a recession almost always follows within 6 to 12 months. The second measure is from the University of Michigan Index, which you can think of as the business view on the economy. This one focuses on purchasing power and big ticket spending. It asks people if they think it's a good time to buy large items like appliances or cars. In other words, do people want to spend right now? Well, this index hit an abysmal 56.4 in January. So you have the workers' view telling us that jobs are hard to get, and the business view telling us that consumers don't feel safe spending. When these two indices drop at the same time, like they just did, it means the distress is everywhere. So what caused the January 2026 collapse? It wasn't just one thing. It was a perfect storm of three specific shocks. First, shelf shock. 25% tariffs on goods from Canada, Mexico, and China went into effect. Prices on things like car parts and groceries spiked up to 12% overnight. When the goods we buy get more expensive due to tariffs, people reasonably don't want to buy those more expensive goods, and consumer confidence drops. Second, government friction. A massive 43-day government shutdown at the end of 2025 left people feeling like the system was unstable. Instability is not a recipe for confidence. If consumers don't have a feel for what's coming down the road, they aren't likely to spend, but rather they'll save to weather whatever storm might be brewing. And third, the sentiment schism. This is the wildest one. There's now a 50-point gap in confidence based on politics. Republican-leaning consumers see a boom while Democrats and independents see a recession. It's not just a difference of opinion, it's a difference of fundamental values. One side sees a false alarm in government overreach, while the other sees a miss in failing to protect the vulnerable from these price spikes. This schism means that for many Americans, their economic reality is dictated more by their newsfeed than their bank balance, leading to a highly volatile and polarized macroeconomic environment. And again, tanking consumer confidence. Now, you might think, I don't care about a survey, I just care about my bills. But consumer confidence is a leading indicator. It tells us what's going to happen before it happens. When people report low confidence, businesses see that and stop hiring. They cancel new projects. They prepare for a slump. That's how a bad vibe becomes a real recession. Right now, the only thing keeping the economy afloat is the top 20% of earners who are still spending in a big way. In fact, the top 20% of earners now account for 57% of all US consumer spending. But the data shows that the other 80% are at a breaking point, and spending here is stalling. This K-shaped economy means that if the top earners stop spending because their confidence crashes, there's nothing to stop the entire economy from collapsing. Now, to be fair, that's a big statement and really its own topic, which is why I happen to have an entire video on just this K-shaped economy idea that I'll link to below. In any case, the next time you see consumer confidence in the news, don't ignore it. It's the collective voice of the American people saying whether they feel safe or they feel scared. And right now, they're sounding the alarm. How about you? Are you feeling the shelf shock at the grocery store lately? Before you go, drop a comment below. I want to know if your personal confidence matches the data that we're seeing everywhere. Again, I'm Jeff Galak, and I'll see you in the next one.